You are listening to a recording from the Cooperating to Build a Better Nova Scotia conference in Halifax, a celebration marking the United Nations International Year of Cooperatives. Okay, so I guess we're ready to start. So first of all, welcome to the Cooperating to Build a Better Nova Scotia conference. My name is Mark Sparrow. I'm the co-chair of the conference along with Leslie Brown, the other co-chair. And on behalf of a very hardworking and a very dedicated steering committee, many of whom are in the room, that have worked very, very hard all year long. Thank you very much for coming and welcome to the conference, and give yourselves a round of applause. So this conference is about building a better world, building a better Nova Scotia, and it's about cooperatives, and that to me is all very inspirational. And today we had an opportunity to spend a few hours with a group of youth. We had a youth pre-conference workshop today. And there were about 50 or so young people from across Nova Scotia. Some work in co-ops and credit unions. Many are students. Some are researchers, all different backgrounds. But everybody came together in this room today, and it was really a magical time. We had some great presentations. We had a workshop, and it was just really inspirational to see so many young people so engaged in the idea of cooperatives and even the technical aspects of cooperatives. So I'm inspired by that, and also by our registration attendance. Our audience for this conference, which will go until Saturday afternoon, includes people from many backgrounds. So we're not just from co-ops and credit unions. We're from universities, we're business service providers, we're community economic development people and educators. It's really a broad, diverse range of people that are here for the conference. So we think that's crucial to building a better Nova Scotia, to building a strong cooperative ecosystem. So thank you again for everybody that has come. Again, it is, as hopefully everybody in the room should know, but maybe not, because this event is open also to the community, not just to the co-op stakeholders or people who registered, but this is the United Nations declared International Year of Cooperatives. That's a very significant thing. For a business model to get a year dedicated to itself by the UN, and for the reasons, social integration, social impacts, job creation, wealth retention, all of these wonderful reasons why the UN said, this is a year for co-ops. And what the UN is doing is telling all of their member states to go back to their home countries and to do more to make it better and easier for co-ops to set up and to run and to become strong, because they know how important this model is. Of our 7 billion people on the planet, 1 billion are members of a co-op or a credit union. They create 100 million jobs all around the world, a tremendous amount of revenue that comes through our economy globally within the co-op sector. So it's massively significant, and we're very proud that we have a conference here to mark that in Nova Scotia. So this was identified as something by the steering committee that we didn't want to see this year pass without bringing the whole co-op sector across Nova Scotia together. So we'll be learning, we'll be networking, we'll be attending workshops, we'll be doing some planning. So I hope everybody enjoys the next couple of days. Of course, Nova Scotia has a very rich history with cooperatives, both on the Anglophone and the Francophone side. The Antigonish movement, of course, is very famous internationally, and that is a pillar in Nova Scotia of our co-op history, which, we're still seeing the benefits of that movement here in our province today. So, that being said, the last thing that I wanted to mention was that if you're here tonight and you haven't registered yet, if you're maybe here on behalf of a student, or you're just from the community in general, you're welcome to register, and it's still an option if you'd like to stay tomorrow to take in the rest of the conference. But that's it. At this point, I'd like to introduce my co-chair, the very hardworking and dedicated Leslie Brown.
Yeah, there's a lot of hardworking, dedicated people around this room. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to add my welcomes to those of Mark's. I just wanted to tell you some of the things that are going around. The posters at the back are posters that I encourage you to look at. Working with a grad student from St. Mary's, Kevin Petty, we put out a call to cooperatives and credit unions around the province, offering them the opportunity to do a poster that would talk about their relationships with community. And so you'll see some of the results there. They put some interesting work into that process. We also have something that we're calling community radio going on right outside. You may have seen the buzz around the entrance to the building. It's live on 106.9 FM in the Halifax area and across into Dartmouth. But that also you can go to ryakuga.blogspot.ca and pick it up there. There are connections that will give you access to the webcast. So if you can't be here tomorrow, you might want to tune in every so often to community radio. This is interactive, participatory radio, and it's very informal, and it's very much intended as a community building process. And people who are contributing are going to be people who are involved in co-ops and credit unions, who are interested in cooperation, but also people who are reading poetry and have other interesting community experiences to talk about. So I really encourage you to see if you want to participate as well. Et aussi, nous avons avec nous Monsieur Angus Lefort, qui est avec l'Association des radios communautaires en Atlantique. Et il fera des entrevues pendant la conférence, et je crois que c'est le samedi. Il a un programme avec ses collègues pour 2 heures le samedi. Vous pouvez, est-ce que Monsieur Lefort peut mettre... Oui. Alors, si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez parler avec lui. I have many people to thank, and you know it's customary in these sorts of events to read off a long list of people, and I'm going to do that. I'm afraid you're just going to have to sit and listen. But part of why I'm doing that isn't just to thank them for giving money and that sort of thing. It's to help give us a sense of the incredible interest and support in building a better Nova Scotia, in cooperating to do so, and of course, developing cooperatives. So on the steering committee, we had people from Mount St. Vincent University, Nova Scotia Cooperative Council, le Conseil coopératif acadien de la Nouvelle-Écosse, Credit Union Atlantic and Central and the Caisse Populaire. We had Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network, which is a national research network. We had the Nova Scotia Economic and Rural Development and Tourism from the province, St. Mary's University, SMU, Sobey School of Business, Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations, Rural and Cooperative Secretariat, Canadian Cooperative Association. So Mark and I, wherever he is, we're very privileged to work with those people, so thank you all. And we did have people contributing financially and in kind. So we have the IYC Legacy sponsor, which was the Nova Scotia Economic and Rural Development and Tourism. Youth sponsor, very important to our youth programming, Nova Scotia Department of Community Services. Our translation sponsor for a lot of our material and our interpretation, as you see tonight, is Université Sainte-Anne. Supporting sponsors, the CBU's Shannon School of Business, Co-op Atlantic, the Co-operators, Traduction Nouveau-Brunswick, Patterson Law. And then we have some research that's being presented tomorrow that was sponsored by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, Mount St. Vincent University, Cape Breton University, the Measuring the Co-op Difference Research Network, Social Sciences, I already said that, Nova Scotia Department of Finance, Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations, Nova Scotia Economic and Rural Development again, and St. Mary's University. Ryakuga is giving us a lot of in-kind contributions through the community radio. So we're deeply indebted to these people, and we also hope these networks will continue in the future. One other short little thing, the silent auction for the Cooperative Development Foundation is going on outside. It's starting today, it will end tomorrow. So if you like any of those materials that are out there and would like to put in a bid, we'd love to see you get started. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Church, who's the VP academic for Mount St. Vincent University, and she kindly has agreed to bring greetings on behalf of the Mount.
Thanks, Leslie. On behalf of Mount St. Vincent University, I'm really delighted to welcome you here to the Cooperating to Build a Better Nova Scotia. I have to say, I've already learned something. I've only been here 10 minutes, and I walked looking at those posters, and I realized, oh, a lot of the businesses I go to are co-ops. And I'm sure that's not news to you, but it was kind of news to me. So already it's having an impact. And this, we're really pleased to be co-hosting and co-sponsoring this conference in conjunction with all the other sponsors that Leslie mentioned. And this conference is really highlighting the remarkable work that's being done in the cooperative sector in Nova Scotia and showing how to make those links globally. And I think that when I look through the program, I really see that what's one of the things, academics go to lots of conferences, but what's remarkable to me about this conference is that you're bringing together universities and students and youth and credit unions and cooperatives and government and all these different sectors together. And that's really what makes the cooperative sector so strong. And the other thing I've noticed in your program that I think is quite remarkable is the lifespan. I mean, today you had the youth. I was just talking to some of the participants looking at the youth forum. Tomorrow I see there's one on baby boomers, and then on Saturday you have one on seniors. So you're really spanning the whole lifespan as well. And I'm sure you'll have a very rich and varied conversation over the next few days. I hope that you'll have a chance to see our beautiful campus. And if you're really lucky, you'll see our deer, which are up the hill, and they come out in the evening. And our crows, too. We have a lot of famous crows around here. So, again, I'm happy to welcome you here to the Mount and enjoy your time here. Thanks.
Monsieur Dan, c'est un plaisir pour moi pour vous présenter un monsieur très très important et d'expérience dans les collectivités concernant cette occasion. Et auparavant, j'avais des paix et des hésitations pour faire ça parce que in my village, there is a saying, usually, I come from a village in West Africa, and very high-profile people are introduced by low-profile people. And the reason is that when you are a low-profile person and you are given the opportunity to introduce a high-profile person, automatically you become a high-profile person. So, after this introduction, I will really feel very, very influential tonight. I'm going to introduce to you Mr. Alain Roy. He's a manager and programs, rural manager partnerships and programs, rural and cooperative secretariat. Mr. Roy graduated from the University of Sherbrooke, where he obtained a BA in economics and an MA in cooperative studies. Alain Roy joined the federal government in 1984 to work on the cooperative files and is now the manager of cooperative partnerships and programs with the Rural and Cooperative Secretariat. Through professional and volunteer work, he has accumulated experience in many sectors of cooperative activities: agriculture, credit union, funeral, housing, insurance, food, retail, workers, cooperatives, to name just a few. And I would also like to let you know that Mr. Alain Roy also received in 2012 the Merit Award from the Canadian Worker Cooperative Federation. Monsieur Dan, Monsieur Alain Roy, détenu doing BA en économique et doing maîtresse en coopération de l'Université de Sherbrooke. Alain Roy s'ajoint au gouvernement fédéral en 1984 comme expert des coopératives. Actuellement, ou présentement, il est le gestionnaire partenaire et programme coopératif au Secrétariat aux affaires rurales et aux coopératives. Son parcours professionnel et bénévole lui a permis d'accumuler une vaste expérience de nombreux secteurs de développement coopératif. Agriculture, caisse d'épargne et de crédit, funéraire, habitation, assurance, alimentation, ou dictel, coopérative de travail, pour ne nommer quelques-uns. Messieurs, dames, je vais vous présenter Monsieur Alain Roy.
Bonsoir. So it's quite a challenge. So when Linda Russell wrote to me and asked me about being the keynote speaker, I must say that it is bringing me out of my comfort zone. So being a civil servant, we are not always used to speak in front of an audience. So, and I don't know what reason bringing them to believe that I'll be a great keynote speaker. But let's assume that maybe it's on the one-on-one discussion that they feel that I will do great in this larger audience. So let's start by pretending that we do have this kind of one-on-one discussion, and we'll see how it brings us. And the more I'm hearing people, I feel that they put the bar higher and higher. So now I'm even a bit more nervous. I want to make sure that at the end of this presentation, you will have kept something, and you will say, okay, here, this is worthwhile attending, and this is going to nourish and feed your discussion of tomorrow and Saturday. I'm going to mix technology. I have 1 foot on the old writing styles and 1 foot on the new technology, so we'll see how it does. When I was asked very early to think about it, and it did take some time, because people will know that the Co-operative Secretariat is going through some reorganization, and part of that reorganization is me being declared surplus or having to go. So the reason I'm mentioning that is August 9 was a deciding point for me, and either I was coming here as a non-employee or I was to come as an employee. So I'm coming as an employee. I'm still on that capacity, limited in the opinion I'm going to express. So when Leslie wrote to me, at some point she was hoping maybe some views or personal views on policy, and even maybe on federal policy. So you will accept that in this context, I will limit my comment to something that may feed your thought, but is not going to express either an opinion that I have or opinion that you may think I have. So that's another point. But in general, that being said, I'm not speaking on behalf of government. You're going to, as much as I can, hear what I'm thinking about the cooperative, how I've used cooperative, and we hope we'll do that. The other point that scares me is when I look at the program, it says an hour and a half, as I'm going to be there entertaining people, me as a non-experienced keynote speaker, and I have to make sure that people stay and listen to me all the time. So that's another point. Okay. Je vais parler un peu en français et je vais essayer d'être un peu juste entre les deux langues, mais je m'excuse à l'avance auprès de mes amis francophones. Il y aura peut-être un peu plus d'anglais que de français, mais c'est important. L'exercice de préparer cette présentation a été difficile et quand j'y repense ou je regarde ce que j'ai préparé comme note, ça m'apparaît comme un peu une courte pointe. Et si vous regardez chacun des morceaux, vous allez peut-être pas nécessairement voir comment il s'intègre à l'ensemble de la pièce, mais si vous prenez un peu de recul, j'espère que vous pourrez voir qu'il y a des liens qui existent en chacun des morceaux et que le résultat est meilleur que chacune des composantes. Première chose que j'ai fait, c'était de lister un certain nombre de points ou d'enjeux pour lesquels je pense qu'il était important de se pencher ou sur lesquels il y avait peut-être des choses à dire, importantes pour le secteur, importantes pour son développement. Je vais vous en lister quelques-uns et je les couvrirai peut-être pas tous dans ma présentation, mais je veux que vous les entendiez quand même. Première question, c'est l'identité coopérative. Pour moi, je pense que en 2012, il est essentiel que on fasse une réflexion sérieuse sur comment on se définit comme coopérative et comment on la présente à la population. Deuxièmement, c'est le rôle de l'État. C'est aussi une dimension importante. La notion de législation coopérative, comment elle permet ou comment elle limite parfois le développement des coopératives. L'enjeu de la cohérence dans l'action. Des fois que dans l'ensemble du mouvement, on n'est pas tout à fait cohérent à la fois avec les valeurs et les principes coopératifs. Donc, c'est important aussi d'être transparent, d'être honnête avec les populations qu'on sert. Et cette obligation de résultat demande une cohérence pour que le message porte. Le lien entre la recherche et les coopératives, c'est important. La notion d'entrepreneuriat dans la coopérative. Quelle est la finalité de la coopérative par rapport à d'autres finalités des systèmes économiques? La notion de coopérative, et on parle beaucoup de survie entrepreneuriale, de résilience coopérative, une autre dimension importante. La légitimité parfois de certains dirigeants dans les coopératives. Comment ils demeurent connectés avec la réalité de l'ensemble des membres et comment ils continuent à porter ce message-là de la voix des membres qui ont adhéré à la coopérative et qui continuent à la supporter. La réserve impartageable, la notion de indivisible reserve n'est pas reconnue de façon universelle, mais si elle l'était, quel est l'impact sur les politiques publiques? Ou quel est le contrat social qu'on peut bâtir avec une dimension comme celle-là? La ristourne, la notion de ristourne. Est-ce que c'est ça la définition d'une coopérative pour beaucoup de gens, le fait qu'il y ait une ristourne? Une autre question. Où se situe le modèle coopératif dans la construction d'économies? D'autres mythes aussi, coopérative et innovation. Quels sont les nouveaux secteurs de développement coopératif? À quelle place, à quel endroit on voit se développer des coopératives? Ceci étant dit, je pense que je voulais, dans un premier temps aussi, nous ramener à l'évolution de la formule coopérative au Canada, mais à grands traits. Je suis pas un historien. J'ai une compréhension d'économiste de la formule coopérative et c'est un peu ce qui va guider et influencer ma présentation. À l'origine, les coopératives sont issues de deux motivations. Un groupe de personnes identifie un besoin qui n'est pas comblé par le marché ou par l'environnement dans lequel ils évoluent, ou encore, ils sont victimes d'abus d'un système qui les limite. Dans un cas, par exemple, les caisses populaires, les credit unions ont été créées pour contrer la notion d'usure, le prêt usuraire. Dans le secteur agricole, par contre, on a vu une démarche qui était, il y avait un marché, il y avait un secteur d'activité économique à construire, et le capital ou les investissements n'étaient pas intéressés. Ce sont les agriculteurs qui l'ont pris en main. Ils ont créé de toutes pièces des secteurs d'activité économique qui aujourd'hui sont encore occupés par les agriculteurs, et ils l'ont bâti petit à petit. Donc ça a été la genèse. Et dans cette genèse-là, c'est créer des liens très intimes ou très proches avec les États. Et ça, je dirais que quand on regarde tout le développement de l'Ouest, ça a mené à la mise en place en Saskatchewan, au Manitoba, entre autres, à des ministères de la coopération. Donc, il y avait des ministères complets qui avaient comme tâche de soutenir les populations dans la mise en place de réseaux de coopératives. Et ça a donné des réseaux forts dans la consommation de détail, en agriculture, les céréales et autres. Donc ça a été pour une partie, on a vu la croissance et ça a pris un certain élan. Donc on a connu dans cette période-là un certain nombre de phénomènes, et qu'est-ce qui a conduit à ce phénomène-là? C'était un ensemble d'acteurs qui s'associaient pour rendre la formule crédible. On a vu les syndicats qui ont apporté leur caution, les églises qui ont apporté leur caution, les leaders de la communauté apportaient leur caution, et ça a fait que ces éléments-là ont généré beaucoup d'activités. Je vais prendre le cas du Québec, où, pour faire l'image, on avait un clocher d'église, on avait une caisse populaire et on avait une beurrerie. Et c'était ça la communauté, c'était ça l'économie aussi de la place. Donc ça a été une période, et après les années 50, on a commencé à entrer dans une ère de consolidation. Donc les progrès qu'on a faits ont entraîné dans les années 50, 60, 70 un resserrement du nombre de coopératives, des avancées en termes d'influence économique importants. Et ensuite est arrivé les années 80. Et dans les années 80, un certain nombre d'éléments par rapport à ce lien avec l'État sont disparus. On a vu tranquillement la Saskatchewan éliminer son ministère de la coopération, l'intégrer à un ministère du développement économique. On a vu Manitoba faire de même. Et dans ces deux cas-là, ça se retrouve entreprise Saskatchewan, et dans l'autre cas, ça se retrouve dans un ministère de développement communautaire, habitation et développement communautaire collectif. Donc, au moment où ces questionnements se passaient, le fédéral décide de mettre sur pied un groupe de travail, confie au secteur coopératif le soin de produire un rapport sur le développement coopératif au Canada. Ce rapport-là a été déposé en 84, et c'est à ce moment-là que moi j'arrive au fédéral. Et dans ce rapport, on avait 30 recommandations. On avait identifié des secteurs de développement porteurs, qui étaient l'agriculture, le développement rural, les pêches, la santé, le travail. Et le milieu autochtone. Donc, voici des chantiers ou des secteurs d'activité qui étaient identifiés. Et en plus, on demandait au fédéral de créer un ministère des coopératives. Dans sa réponse, le ministère, ce qu'il a fait, c'est en 87 créer le Secrétariat aux coopératives pour, d'une part, établir un lien entre le gouvernement fédéral comme institution et le secteur coopératif. Et dans cette réponse-là, outre le Secrétariat aux coopératives, il y avait aussi un comité interministériel où on demandait à différents ministères de s'asseoir et de discuter de la contribution des coopératives à l'atteinte de leurs résultats. Et il y a aussi un comité consultatif composé de représentants du secteur coopératif et qui avait l'occasion d'interagir avec le ministre responsable ou un ministre responsable et des hauts fonctionnaires et travailler sur certains dossiers. Donc ça a fait un bout de temps et le rôle du secrétariat était vraiment d'essayer de faciliter la relation entre le secteur coopératif. Et il faut comprendre que dans cette dynamique-là, le développement coopératif est un produit essentiellement des législations provinciales et des initiatives provinciales. Deux éléments pour illustrer ça. Le fédéral a adopté une loi sur les coopératives pour la première fois, les coopératives non financières, en 72. Et les provinces ont adopté des lois à partir, 1900 au Québec et alentour dans d'autres provinces jusqu'à maintenant. Donc, on se retrouve avec plus de 99% des coopératives qui sont de constitution provinciale et moins d'1% des coopératives qui sont sous charte fédérale. Et il y a une notion dans ça de non-concurrence. Donc, ça ne changera pas. Les coopératives fédérales sont des coopératives à activité interprovinciale et les coopératives qui étant par nature locales sont toujours majoritairement des coopératives qui vont être sous la responsabilité provinciale. Donc, de 80 aller jusqu'à 2003, essentiellement, un rôle conseil, collecte de statistiques, essayer d'apporter de l'information au secteur coopératif. Et en 2003, on a l'IDC qui se met en place. L'IDC avait deux objectifs, finalement, avoués. Premier objectif, c'était d'influencer au moins la mise en place de capacités de développement coopératif, de soutenir les efforts pour que quand un groupe voulait démarrer une coopérative, il puisse accès à avoir un minimum de ressources. Et notre contribution a toujours été minime, mais ça a été le premier objectif. Deuxième objectif, c'était de pouvoir illustrer par des exemples concrets la contribution des coopératives à des dimensions importantes pour l'État, que ce soit l'emploi, que ce soit un secteur d'activité, que ce soit un développement communautaire. Donc, c'était les deux grands objectifs qui sont restés jusqu'à maintenant. Donc, quand on repense à ça, on se dit d'une chose, quels sont les résultats qui ont été accomplis? Le premier résultat, ça a été de changer la dynamique dans le secteur. Le secteur, dans certaines provinces, se voyait responsable du développement coopératif et dans d'autres ne se voyait pas. Aujourd'hui, en 2012, dans toutes les régions, les conseils des coopératives assument pleinement cette responsabilité d'organiser, structurer le développement coopératif. Ça, c'est un premier acquis. Le deuxième, à l'occasion, on a réussi à donner des exemples, mais peut-être pas suffisant, peut-être pas au point où on était capable d'engager les programmes politiques, d'engager le politique dans les réformes nécessaires. Donc ça reste toujours un défi, mais le ministre d'alors souhaitait pouvoir vraiment se connecter sur des réalités locales et de les utiliser ensuite dans les discussions plus de politique. Là-dessus, je pense que le travail reste à faire. Je vais passer à l'anglais. The International Years of Cooperative provide all countries an opportunity to take stock of their cooperative sector and to reflect on its development potential. When we look at the global situation, we come to realize the importance of the cooperative sectors. We were talking about a billion member, a million cooperative, 100 million employees. And when we were to look at only the 300 largest cooperatives, we're told that they generate $1.6 trillion in revenue, which is amazing. It's equal to the 9th largest economy, so equivalent in that year to the economy of Canada or India. about. However, when you look at that in terms of world or gross world product, we come to realize that it is 2.3% of the world gross economy, or GDP, or the equivalent of GDP. So this is not at a point where you attract a lot of attention of the decision maker. What is the situation in Canada? About similar, or slightly better. When we look at our stats, if I'm taking only the non-financial cooperative, in 2008, we had 5,680 cooperative reporting, non-financial, so we don't include credit union and insurance. And they generate 35.7 billion volume of business. And again, this Canada is about, I've said, 1.6 trillion. So when you compare 35 on that, it's still around 2.3. So if we were to add credit union, we'll be a little bit higher. So another way of looking at it says, okay, here this is global, this is mixing thing. What's the situation when we look at some sector? There's two sectors that has kind of in the mid-90s, we look at the sectoral GDP. And the agriculture, for example, we estimated around 5% of the GDP, the weight of ag cooperative. The financial sector is doing better. We estimated at 14%, the influence. And then we can look at by region. If you look at Saskatchewan or Quebec or others, if I'm taking the example of Quebec, Desjardins in some market will be at 50% of agricultural loan. They will be at a third or more of mortgage. So that's the other way of looking at it. So if we were to bring back the figures in terms of Canada, if we look at all the cooperative, what we're talking about 9,000 cooperative, including financial cooperative, 18 million membership. So in realities, we estimate between 12 and 14 million Canadian being member of one cooperative at least. Employees, 155,000. Asset, 252 billion. So that's the Canadian. Nova Scotia, about the same, 218 non-financial cooperative reporting in 2008. Volume of business of 769 million, which when I compare to the GDP, about 2.2% of the GDP. So that's the level of and this is not scientific. I'm just taking rough figures just to illustrate that plus or minus, we're still there. So in Nova Scotia, we're saying 211 cooperative, including financials, 215,456 membership, 4,753 employees, $2 billion in asset. Well, that's the picture. Then we got into 2012, and we have Imagine 2012. And I'd like to recognize the work done by Tom Webb, Sonia, and Karen Miner in terms of making that event something that is certainly a milestone in the international year. And certainly I'm glad that it was a Nova Scotia-led experience. So kudos to those. So in that moment, and I'm simplifying here. So what's the conclusion there is, if we keep going the way the system is going, the economy, there's something wrong. There's a wall somewhere. We don't know where, we don't know when, but we'll hit it. So something has to change. So the speaker there advocates strongly for the need to rethink the economy. The current context shows the limit of a system based on infinite growth, capital, and individualistic motivation. Considering the limited resource available, there is a growing movement for an approach promoting sustainable development, serving the need of people. So, again, this notion of putting the peoples at the end of the process, okay? Not just at the beginning and being consumed by the process. So, what other element we have to think in terms of the economy work? How can I illustrate some of the dilemma we have? So, the year 2000, I've seen for the first time, if we look at all the financial transaction, there's more transaction outside the real economy. There was more wealth created by speculative activities than by real production. Well, that's telling something. And what good does it serve, and where are we going? So another study says that, in 2012 it was 95, in 2008 it was 98%. And then we hit 2008, and there's a big collapse in terms of the financial system. So all the gain that people might have done on the market are gone. So in the opinion of the conference speaker, cooperatives are well placed to assume some leadership in the transformation of the system, in making it a bit different and bringing it more into the real activities. Based on what? Based on the fact that they are responsive to where they are. They are rooted in territories, rooted on the need of the members, whoever they are. And from there, okay, we move into the international summit. And the international summit was certainly voicing very clearly and persuasively how cooperatives contribute already to the economy. They are strongly linked to their communities and territory. They are owned and controlled by their members. They exist to meet the need of their members, not to generate profit. They globally bring closer civil society and the economy. They are resilient, resist better to economic crisis, so that's demonstrated in some studies. They have a high survival rate, to name a few examples. But realistically, cooperative cannot eliminate and replace all capital base, and that should not be its goal. But they are more and more evidence that they contribute to build a stronger national economy. And personally, I'm kind of attracted by the ideas developed by Henry Midsberg, an international renowned academic and author of business and management, that is arguing for a number of years that capitalism is not, when we were debating who wins capitalism or communism, says that capitalism, even if communism is collapsed, doesn't mean that capitalism has won. And what he presents is a concept of an economy is a mix of types of organization. And in those type of organization, you have capital owned, you have so the privately owned, the cooperatively owned organization, so where it is, there's a democratic process, there is a user base. There is a notion of non-owner organization, for example, not-for-profit, hospitals, some universities, charities, voluntary association, and then the state. So those are the four. And what he claims is when you mix all of that, there's an ideal proportion that make the economy at an optimal point. So getting back to what I was saying at 2.3, 2.5, maybe we are not at that optimal. So if we want to get to that point, maybe if we were to move that contribution of cooperative at another level, is it 5, is it 10, is it 15, is it more? So that it will have in fact an influence. And on that I'll give you an example. Those we mentioned that I'm involved in a funeral cooperative, and I'll give you the example of Quebec where with 10% of the funeral market, we changed the situation from a point where at the beginning, before a funeral cooperative, Quebec has the highest average cost of funeral of all provinces in Canada. And with 10%, they were part of the lowest cost of funeral. So even with 10%, they were in market, and they were now giving price, and they were dictating in that sector activities the price. So they were kind of controlling the market. There's maybe a situation where will cooperative globally will be able to influence the way the rest of the economy behave, will focus on the real production, focus on job, focus on the result. So I think that's one reason why we should continue thinking about, okay, at what point government should ensure that there is a contribution for each of this type of organization in the economy. And the other thought that I had is in the recent General Assembly, the ICA adopted a blueprint for the cooperative, call it the Cooperative 2020 Challenge, and they are asking all cooperatives to make this decade the cooperative decade, and they want all countries to make sure that the cooperative will be the fastest growing form of businesses in the world. We have to think about that one. And it says, okay, here, how Canada can take up that challenge? The ICA blueprint is concentrating in its strategy on 5 critical interlinked themes: participation, sustainability, identity, legal framework, capital. So I'll switch in French. De tous ces thèmes, pour moi, le thème central doit être celui de l'identité coopérative. On doit s'assurer que il faut qu'on ait une compréhension facile et simple du modèle coopératif. Ce n'est pas la situation actuellement. D'expérience, quand on parle d'une province à l'autre, on entend les notions de coopératives à but lucratif, des coopératives sans but lucratif. On parle aussi de coopératives avec capital, des coopératives sans capital, des coopératives communautaires. Moi, il apparaît essentiel de pouvoir décrire la coopérative en des termes qui sont d'application universelle, qui deviennent une référence forte lorsqu'il s'agit de développer et d'évaluer des politiques. Et on ne peut pas faire, par expérience, on ne peut pas se faire l'avocat d'une forme coopérative dans le cadre de certaines politiques et se faire l'avocat d'une autre forme de coopérative lorsqu'on regarde d'autres politiques. Et on doit avoir toujours la même référence. Et s'il y a quelque chose qui est très sensible, c'est l'incohérence dans le discours. Les politiciens, ou je dirais pas les politiciens, je vais plutôt dire ceux qui développent des politiques ont une allergie pour la confusion. Ils cherchent la clarté et la simplicité. Ils cherchent des lignes directes. Ils sont pas à l'aise avec des situations complexes. Donc, il faut absolument le faire. Puis, je vais vous présenter, moi, ma définition d'une coopérative. Pour moi, une coopérative prend ses origines d'abord dans une organisation associative. Donc, c'est une association de personnes. Une coopérative à une personne, c'est pas une coopérative. Donc, on parle de plus d'une personne qui constate qu'ils ont un besoin à satisfaire et que la meilleure façon de satisfaire ce besoin-là, c'est par une coopérative. Et la coopérative, quand on la définit, c'est une entreprise au service de ses membres et qui va être mesurée par comment elle a réussi à mieux servir ses membres et ses usagers. Et là, on tombe dans une notion qui est fondamentale et qui explique un peu la complexité de la formule coopérative. C'est que l'autre notion qui est importante, c'est celle de l'usage et du lien d'usage. Et elle est importante pour définir l'entreprise. Parce qu'elle va dicter son comportement sur les marchés, elle va dicter son comportement dans les communautés. Vous donner un exemple. Une coopérative de consommation, ce qu'on s'attend, c'est que on s'attend que la coopérative travaille pour offrir un bien au meilleur coût possible, de la qualité la plus haute possible. Donc, son comportement, ce n'est pas de générer des surplus, ce n'est pas d'aller chercher des revenus comme tels. Normalement, tant qu'elle sert ses membres et qu'elle génère suffisamment de revenus pour couvrir ses besoins et assurer son développement, que ce soit remplacer son capital, elle ne cherche pas à en avoir plus. Et le mécanisme que la formule coopérative va trouver, c'est le mécanisme de la ristourne. Cependant, dans une coopérative de producteurs, si les agriculteurs sont membres, ils vont avoir deux approches qui vont avoir des comportements parfois similaires, mais parfois différents sur les orientations. Une coopérative qui s'occupe d'approvisionnement à la ferme, donc elle vient aider l'agriculteur à réduire ses coûts de production, va avoir un comportement différent qu'une coopérative dont on lui donne le mandat d'améliorer le revenu à la ferme. Donc, une coopérative qui a comme objectif de mettre en marché la production bovine, la production laitière, céréalière, va avoir un comportement différent, des stratégies différentes. Parfois, ces coopératives-là se sont trouvées dans une même coopérative, mais ce qu'on voit, c'est de créer des catégories de membres. Un membre usager pour l'approvisionnement, un membre usager pour la mise en marché de son produit. Le cas d'AgroPure, dans ce contexte-là, est intéressant. Ils ont allé je pense, c'est dans les années 90, maintenu deux filières, une filière approvisionnement et une filière laitière. Et en 86, se sont séparés, ont formé une coopérative distincte pour s'occuper uniquement de l'approvisionnement. Parce que là, dans les développements, les décisions se faisaient un peu en opposition et il y avait à clarifier les mandats d'entreprise. Donc, elles l'ont fait et ces deux coopératives-là sont des coopératives qui fonctionnent très bien. L'autre variante de celle qui cherche le revenu, c'est la coopérative de travail. Donc, la coopérative de travail, elle va vouloir agir sur le marché pour valoriser le prix du travail, le salaire et les conditions de travail des employés. Et c'est certain qu'elle a un comportement qui est un peu différent des coopératives de consommation à cet égard. Ensuite de ça, on arrive avec ce concept des dernières années qui est, oui, mais on pourrait avoir dans une même coopérative des gens avec des intérêts opposés qu'on va retrouver dans ce qu'on appelle la coopérative de solidarité ou en anglais multi-stakeholder cooperative. Et dans le fond, ce que ça veut dire, c'est que si on met un consommateur membre avec un travailleur membre dans une coopérative, les deux vont pouvoir légitimement prétendre avoir généré une partie du surplus. Et la question, c'est est-ce que ces deux groupes avec des intérêts un peu séparés sont en mesure de s'entendre sur une répartition juste, équitable, transparente et respectueuse de chacun des groupes. Donc ça existe. Là-dessus, je prétendrais que la Caisse populaire, la Credit Union, telle qu'on la connaît aujourd'hui, sans que les gens soient, ou les agents soient aussi différents, ça a été la première forme de coopérative de solidarité ou multi-stakeholder. On trouve dans une même coopérative des gens qui, à un moment ou l'autre de leur vie, soient des épargnants nets ou des emprunteurs nets. Ils sont dans la même institution, ils génèrent tous les deux des surplus, et à la fin, on fait confiance au conseil d'administration d'arriver avec une répartition juste et équitable, mais il y a effectivement une décision qui se prend d'accorder à l'épargnant un bonus sur son épargne et à l'emprunteur un rabais sur ses emprunts, ou ses coûts d'emprunt. Mais là, il y a une formule. Donc, ces deux, ça démontre que c'est possible, ça a vécu jusqu'à maintenant, mais il y a des conditions préalables à ça, qui sont peut-être plus faciles dans le cas de l'épargne et du crédit qu'il le serait dans le cas de la consommation et du travail. Mais ce sont des pistes, je pense, qui sont intéressantes. Ce qu'il faut, c'est au départ d'avoir un contrat social ferme et des critères qui sont durables dans le temps pour faire examiner cette répartition éventuellement du surplus et qui mérite d'avoir le bénéfice de ce surplus. Est-ce qu'on a vendu trop cher la canne de conserve ou est-ce qu'on a sous-payé notre travailleur? La question se pose, c'est ça. Et c'est la beauté de la formule coopérative. Étant un organisme démocratique, il y a moyen de régler ça. On met encore l'accent sur l'humain et c'est une façon de le faire. Donc, bon, mon souvenir fait aussi que les pionniers de Rockdale avaient cette préoccupation-là aussi. Dès le départ, il y avait ce débat entre les consommateurs et les travailleurs. Il y avait une motivation artisanale, donc ça venait du mouvement ouvrier, cette formule-là. Et ils ont, pendant quelques années, tenté d'accommoder les deux. Puis ensuite de ça, il y a une voix qui a répondu. Mais ce débat-là existe depuis longtemps. Thank you. Donc, l'autre constat que la formule des pionniers de Rockdale faisait, c'était comment, de façon efficace, contrer ce qu'ils percevaient comme étant la notion d'une propriété impersonnelle du capital sur les populations, sur les gens qu'elles devaient servir. Ils pouvaient voir à ce que le système conduirait à des résultats contraires aux intérêts généraux, et c'est un peu ce qui a motivé leur formule. Je vais aller en anglais. From that point, we can consider the behavior that I mentioned before and the way co-operatives are serving those people. But at the same time, there's nothing that if you don't have something to cement all of those organizations, there's nothing that prevents group to be abusive on another one. You can have a consumer exploiting the employees. You can have farmers exploiting the consumer by using imposition. So I think here we are talking really about changing the DNA of the system, having people to kind of really put their well-being under constraint of the majority well-being, of being able to increase the well-being of everybody at the same time. So that's where you do have organizations like the provincial co-op councils that help. That's why also you have in the principle one principle that says cooperation amongst cooperatives is to be able to create that forum where you will seek together the right price, le prix juste, So that notion of being able to ask from people not up to the last cent, but up to a point where they continue to be a good consumer. And they continue to increase their well-being as well as you are able to increase yours. So those things have to be important. We are building more than businesses because they are owned by people. And that's another claim that I make often. For me, cooperative is not either for profit or not for profit. That notion of profit is created for some intention. And at the end of the day, it's in the end of the members that notion should reside. For what purpose? If we want people to contribute to financing the public good, the public services, you have some measure. The cooperative is an instrument to allow people to contribute to that cost, to bring in their share. So the cooperative will behave on the market for sure. They will tend to act like others. They will be in competition with the other. But at the end of the day, the cooperative itself will keep only the money it needs to continue perform its function. All the rest should be returned to the members. And that's where resides this notion. And our tax system recognizes that. Our tax system, for example, is saying that, okay, in a consumer cooperative, we are not taxing the patronage dividend because it is price adjustment in the end of the consumer. And he always been taxed on the dollar he used to buy that. But for the farmers, whether it is a reduction in his cost of production or an increase in his revenue, this is revenue that was never taxed. So it's going to be subject to tax, to condition. The same for employees. But employees, we get into something a little bit more tricky in terms of looking at this, because if the employees is salaries, then there's this notion of all the salary tax that may, at the end, be a large amount. And some cooperatives may decide that, okay, for us, we need that money to keep capitalizing our organization, so it's okay to pay a minimum tax, but will the cooperative also pay its share for the benefit? And then you go into a situation where employees may decide that they prefer to have a little bit less protection that those programs provide them to ensure that the cooperative keep growing. So it's not strictly straightforward in that debate about considering that as money returned to the employees in the form of some sort of capital rather than salary. And and by that I mean that the cooperative will have to pay its share to EI, will have to pay its share in terms of insurance and all those other points. So it's kind of an evolving. The other thing is, I just touched the notion of the tax system, and I mentioned the patronage dividend. But to my opinion, there's no tax measure in Canada that are specific to cooperative, that recognize and are built to recognize the nature and to strengthen its nature. Any business can do a patronage dividend. It will be treated the same. It will be a reduction in their costs, in their revenues. It will be a cost. So Costco can do the same. They can send a check tomorrow to all the customer, and it will be subtracted from their income. And it won't be taxed in the end of the consumer. And it will be treated the same. Private sector says that, okay, this is an unfair situation because dividend is taxed twice and so on and credit. But they can reduce the price to the consumer. They can do it. They won't do it because it's not in their DNA. They won't do it because it's not the intent. It will go counter to maximizing the values of shares, maximizing the values of capital. So the only measure that I've seen that is responding to some of the constraints that cooperatives have in terms of their financing is the in French, I would say le report sur le paiement des dividendes, de la ristourne. Donc, le rapport d'impôt, it's tax defer on patronage dividend. That's the only thing. And that's what is doing what? Is recognizing that the effort asked to members was bigger than what they can, because by leaving the money, they have to find money elsewhere to pay their tax contribution. So what is happening, in fact, is say, okay, here, we recognize that, we will wait until you receive the money, and at that point, that money will be taxable. And by doing that, it is also helping the cooperative to convince members to leave a bit more money in the cooperative for its need. So that's the only measure that has a point, but it's limited to agriculture cooperative at the federal level. It's not for fishery, it's not for other form of a producer cooperative if we were to limit ourselves to that point. How am I doing in times? Is it okay? So that's it. In terms of the user link, there's another dimension that is important, but more important for the governments, for the ownership, for the expression, is the intensity of that user link. And I'll give you a couple of examples. On one example, for example, whether it is a credit union or a retail food cooperative, you do have a relationship with your cooperative every week, sometime more, sometime less, but you are in constant transaction with the cooperative. At the other end, you have the funeral cooperative, where you have limited interaction with your cooperative. So, and so be it. I think that's what we want. But when you look at governance, and you look at the convincing people to become members for a cooperative that will serve them the latest possible, so you do have to come up with some. It is a challenge. You have an AGM and you try to call members. It is difficult. The other aspect, you says, okay, this is the only cooperative that has difficulties to attract members at their AGM. But of course, the larger the cooperative is, if I'm looking at Mountain Equipment Co-op, 2 million plus. How you manage governance in this case. And again, in their case, they may have people that have very regular transaction every week, every month, but some others will have one transaction and then 5 years, 10 years without, and so is the system. So how you manage the cooperative structure in this case, that's another. But so for me, the cooperative has members. There's the user link that defines how the cooperative behaves and how it will act on the economy and on the market. And then the government is linked with the intensity of the user link. And also, the larger you are, the better job you do, you will have issues with la fidélisation, how you maintain people, and the danger of being seen as like any other financial institution. So how to be true to those people in terms of that. So I'm given a 5 minutes point, and you're very, very kind to me. The other thing that I want to highlight here, just to give you some measure of the difficulties of responding to the ICA challenge. Since 1984, we create in Canada between 300 and 550 cooperatives, with a peak in 1990, 1991, where we had 545. So that's one dimension. Between 2003 and 2007, the average creation of cooperative was 2,089, And even if in that period we had CDI, which was a little program that's trying to foster both development capacity and supporting some local community project. But more than that, during that period, Quebec has created 60% of all new cooperatives was created. So when you see, we can find our comparison where we want, but you have a province that has 23% of the population. They create 60% of all cooperative, new cooperative, the startup cooperative in Canada. The other dimension, since 1986, the numbers of cooperative is about the same, 5,700 reporting, stable, no progress. So basically we create cooperative, but there's more cooperative that died, or there's merger consolidation. Other things that we should reflect. I think we should have a close look at the statistics and see what they are telling us. 92% of the volume of business and 72% of the employees are concentrated in two sectors of activity, agriculture and retail. Agriculture and retail account for 24% of cooperative, while housing represents 41% of the individual cooperative. So that's the reality. How you change that, how you become the fastest growing model. Are we talking about creating new cooperative? Are we talking about volume of business? Because we were successful in terms of increasing 2007, $31 billion volume of business, 2008, 35. So $4 billion volume of business more for non-financial. It's impressive. Are we achieving the goal that ICA is presenting to us? The question stands. Before concluding, I want to just revisit the work that Dr. Alexander Laidlaw has produced prior to the ICA AGM in 1980. And he had produced a report called Cooperative Development in year 2000. And in his report, he had roughly identified 4 priorities area. In the years ahead, he was saying cooperative everywhere should concentrate especially on the world problem of food. So here we have heard that over and over, and I think that's an area where there's progress. But the second area is workers, productive, and industrial cooperatives are the best means to create a new relationship between worker, the workplace, and to bring about another industrial revolution. So where are we from that position? Well, that's another way. If we want to change the way things happen, we need to be more in the processing. We need to be more in the production of goods and services. The traditional consumer cooperative should be oriented in such a way that it will be doing something more than merely trying to compete with the capitalist business. It will be known as a unique and different kind of businesses and will serve only members. So that's another vision that he was presenting. And then I think, to me, this is another dimension that we have to look at, is a lot of cooperatives are very strong in rural communities. But if we want to make the difference, we'll need an urban strategy. We'll need to be able to see, to have cooperatives present in dimension of their life in cities where the new Canadians are happening, where there's population growth, and when a lot of rural peoples are moving in. So that's another thing. And I'll finish by saying that in the last 15 years, when you look at the rural situation, I think we are in front of a new situation where we may be able to rebuild the kind of consensus that exists between leaders of the communities. And taking an example is you go into a community, you have a general store or a gas bar that closed. Who is the first person that receive a call to find a solution? It's normally the mayor or somebody elected to take care. And when he looks at it, more and more of those are prepared to work on cooperative solution, because this seems to be, and they are prepared to voice that and give credential to cooperative in forum like the Canadian Federation of Municipalities. So that's another place where we build. But we need to rebuild the connection with unions. Union was instrumental in ensuring that housing cooperative was created in Canada. So that's another point. And all the other association, we need to find a way of contributing what cooperatives are, and we are to pay attention of how we define cooperative so it is still true to the definition and not adapt and move into direction that might not be the best one long term for the formula, but is responding to short-term imperative or policy objective or adjusting to make sure that we fit a program. At some point, we need to become stronger enough that the program will have to fit cooperative. We have to change that in ensuring that this is the case. So that's why I think it's so important to focus on identity of cooperative, to present that as a solid model that become the reference, and ensuring that we are not making compromise on what should be seen as the DNA of cooperative. It should be recognized, it should influence and contaminate the others, and we should put in a position where they got to realize that at some point, if we want solid cooperative and more cooperative, we need policy and program that respond to that. So that's, with all humility, not word of an expert, but word of an observer. You may have question that you want to ask me. I have a ton of other things that I could have said that I haven't said that might have been more interesting than what I said. But that's now you to decide. So it's up to you.
Before we have the formal thank yous by Joe Kendler and Brittany Erickson, we do have a few moments for some questions, and I know also that Alain will be coming to the reception after and be around tomorrow. So are there any questions that you would like to ask? We have time for a few.
You mentioned a couple of times about the co-op expansion in Quebec, especially in agriculture. Can you explain to us the incentive that the government in Quebec have to get farmers, which we just consider a family farm? In Quebec, it's financially viable for them to form a cooperative. Although they're a family farm competing with me, they are cooperative and have certain status in Quebec that we don't have.
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure I can respond completely, but certainly the relation between cooperative and all parties over the years have been very close. And I guess the leader of the society has contributed to do that. Just to take the example of La Coop Fédérée de Québec. So basically, there was a strong, and that was in 1920, 22, where this happened. There was a strong conviction that the state had to help farmers to organize themselves. And there was competing organization, and at some point, all of them were to fail, and the government supported them and create la coopérative fédérée, or forced them to merge and become. At some point, the government was fairly involved, to the point where maybe in today's standards, we said, okay, here is who's controlling the farmers or government. But at some point, it was a point where it started. And if we look at the ag cooperative today and the fédérée, certainly they have grown a position on the market that give them also influence in terms of policy, but it's still controlled by farmers. And in terms of the agriculture, I don't know how much a specific program there is, but I know that in terms of co-op policy, there was issues that support the agriculture, like the cooperative investment plan that allow farmers to invest and that get some tax credit for that. And the Quebec government was more sensitive of, on one hand, they were establishing measures that support financing the stock market or other capital-based organization. And it took them still 10 to 15 years to come up with a measure like the cooperative investment plan that is used. And then they were the first one to introduce the income tax deferral on patronage dividend. So they try to work in sync, and there is a lot of, I think the Quebec government recognized that through its policy, it can influence the strength of the cooperative. And there is a will to really think how they will adapt their measure to the nature of cooperatives. So that's one distinction.
Okay, one more or two more, okay.
I would be very interested to know what, excuse me, I have a cold, so I hope you can understand me. What is the most promising trend or thing that you've seen out of this year for the promotion of cooperatives, and what's the most alarming?
It's a tough question. I would say that, yeah, it is. I would say that the most surprising thing is, I hope that all the activities around the international years have bring the different sector of cooperative in Canada closer. And we see sign of that, supporting others. And Desjardins, for example, if I take that one, the fact that they were the host of the International Summit has bring into the organization a level of discussion and reflection on how they were serving the cooperative development that helped creating new service, new product. And one of them was announced during the summit, the Desjardins putting some dollars into a cooperative program that with the BDC, with the CFDCs, they were creating a potential pool of dollars that when there is project that's looking for financing, each one will bring its share. So it's not like everyone was putting upfront the 15 million, but there's commitment to manage that program. So that's one thing. The other thing is the capacity to change things. Here there is, in French we say in complicité. There is some understanding between government and a relationship that is kind of a constructive. It's not one serving the others or the other imposing on the first. There is a real personality, a government personality that put forward its objective in terms of result, and the co-op sector that has its objective, and at some point through discussion they come to something that meet both sides of the equation. But for the last 10 years, Quebec has a policy on cooperative development through which the government is providing money, but the sector is putting $500,000 a year in this. So only the province. So that's kind of a deal, but through that they finance their resource group. The other thing where the rest of Canada is not at this moment, they for many years have attached their contribution to results. So they contribute a portion per job created, per cooperative created. That's a tricky thing. So, and the challenge was, okay, how to ensure it's not a bottom-up creation of cooperative, and how you ensure that it's real cooperative. So there's risk. One of the risks that the Quebec government has is we were talking about the tax measure and the incentive. But at some point you have a cooperative in River that triggers our crisis with RSPs and so on, that create a mechanism for people to invest without having to reimburse at the end. And they use a cooperative. So there is a responsibility from government, from the sector, to ensure that those use of cooperative are not happening, and they are. But how can you avoid that? There's somebody that has the ideas, they build it, and they do the damage before people realize it. So after that, we have to do that. So the main fear is if we want to make, we need co-op plan, strategic plan for development. We need to pick our battles. We need to invest in the right spot. And as I said, it takes a long time. The Quebec experience showing that government is a great partner and government is getting benefit. But it takes time to get to a point where the cooperative development is generating the types of results they have. And on the large scheme of things, it is not huge. Again, when we're talking about a couple of hundred of cooperatives a year, it's not huge. But it's how this can be the nucleus of something. So that's the other side, to ensure that there's a system. Where is this coming? And I'm just going to share with you, I'm on the board of a funeral cooperative, and working in government, my analysis is cooperative cannot rely on government to provide all the resource all the time. And we have to do something. So what we have decided at our funeral cooperative is to create a cooperative development foundation in the form of an endowment fund. And we are investing from our cooperative activities 20% of our surplus, which means that in the last 3 years, we have invested $425,000 in that fund. And it's endowment fund. So what we want is, let's dream. People that created those structures have dream at some point. The dream is that 10 years down the road, this alone will be able to provide the revenue to finance the co-op development capacity in the region of the Outaouais. And then you change the relationship. Then you are not giving to a government this position where you say, okay, here, you are asking me to put all the money, and if I'm putting all the money, I want to direct that money, and I want to decide how it's going to happen. But I think if you change the position, because they have tons of other pressure points, it's not an easy time for government. So when you want, what types of discussion, what relationship you want with government? You want a relationship where they will say, okay, here, you are successful. I want to be part of that success. You are delivering results. You are creating job. I want to attach my organization to those successes. And that's where you want to be at some point. You want to say, okay, here, whether you come to the table or not, this is happening. If you come, it will be maybe happening faster. It will be, the magnitude will be bigger. That's what you have to decide. You want to be part of that revolution, that change, or you want to wait. And I'm saying here in Outaouais, the bet we are making is, okay, we are not going to wait. We will create something, and the endowment fund is providing some guarantee to our funeral cooperative that this money will be there, even if 1 year we don't have surplus. They're still generating the income and making a difference.
This will be the last question for the evening, and the rest can come in formally.
Dans ta conclusion, Alain, tu faisais allusion au fait que pour accélérer la croissance des coopératives, elles devront développer des partenariats avec de nouveaux acteurs. Tu as fait allusion aux municipalités, tu as fait allusion ensuite aux syndicats. Est-ce que tu pourrais te développer un peu plus dans la question de la relation avec les syndicats, dans la perspective de l'utilisation des coopératives de travail pour la relève d'entreprise?
Écoute, moi, ce que je pense avec ces syndicats, c'est une question de crédibilité de la formule. Il y a un certain nombre d'entreprises syndiquées qui sont appelées à disparaître. C'est-à-dire que les syndicats, je ne pense pas qu'ils aient poussé leur réflexion assez loin dans ce secteur-là. Est-ce qu'ils ont été capables de prendre acte des signes de de ralentissement, de décroissement ou de désinvestissement dans des entreprises. Et s'ils veulent trouver une autre piste aussi, c'est de donner une chance à des travailleurs sous la forme coopérative d'assumer un rôle. Et à cet égard-là, ils ont beaucoup d'influence sur les politiques. Et pour la CSN, entre autres, est celle qui est la plus ouverte à des expériences de coopératives de travail, mais ça devrait être généralisé ailleurs aussi. Et c'est peut-être difficile de changer le paradigme des syndicats qui fonctionnent avec un employeur, un rapport de force, mais quand on revient à la base qui est d'améliorer le sort ou la condition des travailleurs comme travailleurs, je pense qu'il y a lieu d'investir ce terreau-là. C'est le cas, je pense, en France et en Espagne, où il y a une grande proximité entre la finalité des coopératives et la finalité des syndicats. Et sur ça, ils sont capables de fonctionner. Au Québec, on a des exemples dans les ambulancières où, si je me trompe pas, toutes les ambulancières sont syndiquées. Et il faut redéfinir la relation, le rôle du syndicat, mais ultimement, ce sont tous ces syndiqués-là qui sont les propriétaires, donc ils ont deux chapeaux et ils doivent se partager les rôles. Mais pour moi, ça c'est une question de que ce soit les syndicats ou d'autres. C'est-à-dire, si les seuls qui parlent de coopératives avec conviction, ce sont les coopérateurs et qu'ils en parlent entre eux, il faut être contaminant. Il faut faire en sorte que d'autres leaders d'opinion donnent aussi de la crédibilité. Et moi, je conteste que de plus en plus, il y en a d'autres qui ne sont pas des coopérateurs nécessairement, qui disent faut examiner la forme coopérative. Et le fait d'avoir plus de coopératives, ça va faire que l'ensemble des économies sont plus fortes. Moi, je pense que c'est là. Ça veut dire que si dans les cas où les églises ont encore un rôle à jouer dans la solution de problèmes, et tu m'ouvres la porte sur une autre chose par rapport aux syndicats. Une des avenues qu'on regarde, c'est le modèle italien avec les services publics, les services sociaux, tout ça. Mais dans ça, il y a une condition fondamentale. On peut créer des coopératives à partenaires multiples avec les travailleurs, tout ça, mais ça ne doit pas être pour déplacer les syndicats. Il faut que l'intention soit claire et que dans sa relation, la coopérative ne devienne pas un agent de l'État, mais elle devient un agent des bénéficiaires dans une relation contractuelle où son droit de gérance et son droit à l'allocation des surplus demeure entièrement de la responsabilité de la coopérative. Si on fait une coopérative de santé, et qu'on a un modèle comme celui de la Saskatchewan, à la fin de l'année, si on fait un surplus, la coopérative doit être capable de décider à partir de ses membres ou réinvestir. L'État, lui, doit s'assurer qu'il soit réinvesti dans ce bien public qu'il a défini, qui est la santé. Mais est-ce qu'il a besoin de couper les vivres de la coopérative parce qu'ils ont fait un profit une année? Mais je pense que cette relation-là, si on veut avoir des coopératives autonomes, et il y a de la place pour moi dans ce secteur-là, et je ferai état que avant d'avoir des hôpitaux publics, il y a eu des coopératives qui ont testé le modèle et ça a pris de l'ampleur. En France, le chemin de fer, ça a été une coopérative qui a été mise en place avant d'être un chemin de fer d'État. Donc, les coopératives sont dans l'innovation sociale, dans la livraison de biens publics, et là-dessus, ce qu'il faut préserver, c'est leur autonomie de direction. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. So our two of the youth delegates will thank Alain formally on our behalf. So Joe and Brittany.
Good evening, everyone. What a great start to our conference. As Leslie said earlier, I'm Joe Candelora, and joining me tonight is Brittany Erickson. We're both members of the Youth Committee, and we've had the privilege of working with the main steering committee to plan this conference over the past several months and provide a youth aspect and a youth vision towards the conference. Brittany's just going to say a few more words, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about something we have going on tonight called Co-operative.
Okay, we would like to take this opportunity to thank Alain for his years of dedication to Canada's cooperative sector and for taking the time to be here and speak with us tonight. We would like to present you with this gift and certificate of thanks. We will also be making a donation in your name to the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, or SOCO-DV. Thank you.
So tonight we have something special planned for you. We're going to be playing a game called Co-operative. It's nothing like Monopoly, although it sounds like that. It's a game based around the cooperative model where everybody works together in their own mock cooperative to come over to get over challenges and either make or break themselves through the cooperative values. And during tonight's reception, we're gonna have lots of food, so make sure to stick around and join us with a game. We're gonna be set up in the lobby here, and thank you very much.